Please welcome to the stage Molly Cameron.
Hi, I'm Molly Cameron. Let's get into this. Before I left for a semester in Prague, I told everyone I was doing better. I was seeing an on-campus therapist at the end of my sophomore year of college, and when I was in that tiny room, all that anxiety felt very manageable. And at this time in my life, I never remember anyone saying the words eating disorder. But I was trying to skip meals with coffee, I was counting every calorie, I was going to the gym all the time, and I definitely had an eating disorder. And this was a problem, but the overarching problem that I learned in therapy was all this anxiety. I was trying to be perfect at everything, and deciding what perfect meant was exhausting. But at the end of the summer before I left, I felt like I was doing a little better. I was eating some real meals, I was getting sleep, and I thought that when it was time to return to schoolwork, maybe I wouldn't cry over A-minuses. But when I landed in the Czech Republic at the beginning of my junior year of college, I realized very quickly I was far away from that little room. I was far away from all these people I had made promises to, and conveniently with this brand new group of people who didn't know what I was up against. So it was going to be much easier to just pretend nothing was going on. And I was in Prague to study arts and social change. And it was a program that focused on cultural immersion. So that meant that we weren't in a big fancy dorm with other American students, but we were placed with individual host families around the city. And me and the 11 other students didn't go to a university either, but we were all in this one little classroom every day, just us taking classes together. And we had teachers that came in and taught us about Czech language and history and art and politics. And this was a very new and exciting way to learn and to live, but it was also totally overwhelming. I was a theater major, so I was used to having classes where we would roll around on the floor and do breathing exercises and then write essays about our character's history. And now we were talking about the disillusion of Eastern European political regimes. It was very new. But what I did love was we would go on these architecture walks. And our art history teacher was this very exuberant British man who walked very quickly. But he would point out everything from 12th century churches to sad Soviet-style apartment buildings from the 70s and tell us the history about everything behind it. And one of my favorite parts of the city was Old Town Square, which is pretty touristy, but I just loved the contrast there. You would have these old Baroque buildings with frills upon frills and then more gold frills and ornaments and these giant statues from centuries ago. And then you'd have a McDonald's in the corner. And whenever we were there, I just wanted to stop and soak it all in and see every little detail. We were always moving at this brisk pace that was out of my control. And at that point, I was really feeling like everything was out of my control. I had this host mother who very nicely made me dinner every night, usually with a large amount of potatoes involved. And it was so nice for her to make dinner, but I really wanted to make my own dinner. I wanted to be in charge of everything that I ate. But even if I were in charge of it, I didn't even know what to eat because I had been spoiled with salad bars and cereal at college, and then I would open the fridge here and it was a whole new world. And then I would go to class and we would discuss things describe how your host family's community structure reflects the changes of post-Soviet Europe. I'd be I don't even know what part of that means. And I turned in my first paper and I got a B, and it was devastating to somebody who was used to getting at least an A. And I just thought, shit, this is really hard. So I went back to the things that I was good at. I was good at getting up very early in the morning to go jogging. I was good at telling my host father, no, I only need to bring a yogurt for lunch because we have food in the classroom. And if one of my new friends asked if something was wrong, I was a good actor. And I would say, I'm just very tired. And every night I would come home to this journal I had and just pour all these thoughts and feelings and all of my true self into this paper because I thought that is the safe place to keep this. If I can hide everything in this journal, then no one will know what's really going on, and I can be fun, happy, cool Molly on the outside, and no one will know that I'm slowly falling apart. So one day in this little classroom, we have a collage workshop. And the assignment was to create a collage that represents your own vision of Prague. And they gave us like markers and papers and magazines, and then we were going to present it to the class. And I was really excited because I was in a real collage phase at that point. This was 2003, so I was really into making collage jewel case covers for people's mix CDs and making like collage birthday cards. And of course, in my journal, I had a lot of collages. So I thought, finally, something I am good at. And I decided I wanted to make a Baroque statue, like these things I had seen in Old Town Square with all the ornamentations and frills. But I wanted to show this mix of old and new Prague, this contrast. So I was going to make this outline of a statue, but fill it in with little pieces of modern Prague. So like pictures from magazines of cars and fast food and fashion and modern architecture. So I built this outline and I cut out like arms and legs from a model, but then filled in the torso and the head with all sorts of weird little things. And the instructor that day was this guy that looked like Rivers Cuomo from Weezer. So I also wanted to impress him because I was like, this guy's a really cool art teacher. So I'm working on my collage and he comes around and he looks at it and he says, "This is great." And I was like, oh my God. He said, "It's great. This cool guy likes my art." And great is maybe like an A, right? But then I thought, what if I could make it more great? What if I could make it an A+? What if I could make my collage the best representation of arts and social change that this has ever seen, and all my classmates will love me, and my teacher will love me, and I am going to make the best collage that has ever been made. So I just kept cutting out more and more pieces and just like sticking them, and I still had this outline of a statue, but it was getting weirder. It was getting very thick. And I cut out like the face of a clock to put in the face of the statue. I had the arms balance a coffee cup and then a tower of cocktails. I cut out the words "work hard" and pasted them against the bottom. And then I just got Sharpies and drew arrows at everything because look at it. Look at the statue. I was working right up until the last minute, just like sweating. And a part of me said, like, you can stop. And most of me was like, no, you can't stop. You have to make this the best collage. And right until he said, time's up, I kept working. So finally we finished. Czech Rivers comes around again. And he looks at my collage, but this time he looks very sad. And he said in his very blunt Eastern European way, "This is too much. You should have stopped earlier." And I felt the heat in my face and my insides were like shaking, and it was like everything that I had pushed into that journal was somehow about to come out. And I tried to like tamp it down and be calm and tell him like, maybe I want it to be over the top. Maybe it is too much. Maybe that's my vision of Prague. This is how I want it to look. And he just kind of like crossed his arms and frowned at it like, no. And I knew that I was going to cry, and I couldn't cry in front of my friends because I was cool. So I threw the collage aside and I ran into the bathroom and locked the door. But when I got in there, it was like I couldn't even cry. Everything was wound so tightly that I was just making these like, just like gasping like a fish. And thank God it was a single person bathroom. No one was in there to hear me gasping like a fish. But I didn't even know what was happening to my body. I just sat on the ground and my hands were shaking and I couldn't take in air. And then my vision started to go black and my hands just went numb. And I have passed out before. I have a lot of medical fears, mostly needle related. So I had passed out a couple times and I recognized I'm about to faint. But like, what's going on? I'm in a bathroom. I shouldn't be fainting right now. So I just lay back on the cool floor of the bathroom, not caring how gross it was. And I put my hands over my mouth and breathed into them because I remember a doctor telling me to do that once when I had passed out. And finally I got some air in. Finally the light came back. I could feel my hands. I could feel my limbs. So I dusted myself off and I went out to present my collage. And I don't remember what I presented that day. I don't even know if it was graded. But I did find that collage years later at my parents' house, and it was only then that I really understood what it was about. I had created a self-portrait. There were some beautiful things at the bottom layers, but I had covered them up with so many other layers of fears and anxiety that you couldn't get to that part. There was the fear that I wasn't going to do well at my classwork, and fear that I wasn't going to make friends, and this like ever-present brain drain fear of my own body. And I know now too that what I had in that moment was a panic attack, because that's what happens when you try to tamp down feelings and you don't share them with a human. And here I was trying to present myself as a perfect, unbreakable statue. So I still have that collage, and I have kept it as a reminder that when things are so bad that I can't even breathe, maybe I am hiding under too many layers, and maybe great is all I need to be. Thank you.